Hi guys, it's Denise here. Welcome to A Smiling Hope. Remember, it's a good day to have a smiling hope kind of day. Well, before I begin, I want to thank each and every one of you for following, for your likes, for your comments, for your messages by joining A Smiling Hope. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and really soon our website, asmilinghope.org. Well, today I will be talking a little bit more about my experience with the loss and grief of my mother. But if you have not seen the introduction video, please go ahead and do so. So, about my mom. My mom's name is Rogelia Lebron Arroyo. My mom was born September 18, 1944, and she moved to heaven. She passed away on April 23rd, 2020. So just to talk a little bit and backtrack about my mom's health. My mom experienced cancer on 3 different occasions. Years ago, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 1. She received radiation and did pretty well. Years later, she experienced cancer, skin cancer. It was on her nose and she had surgery. They removed that little area of her nostril and she recovered really well. Her third encounter with cancer was ovarian cancer. At the time of her diagnosis, it had already metastasized to her colon, intestines, her liver. At the time, my mom started to receive chemotherapy, and unfortunately, it was not going well. So she eventually transitioned to palliative care and then hospice care. My mom was living with me at the time, and she was actually staying in my room. Unfortunately, in the midst of her receiving hospice, COVID occurred. So the services that she was receiving, she had a registered nurse, a social worker, counselor, and a chaplain coming to the home. All of those services ceased. The nurse was providing her services via phone, which it was no way the same in the sense of not having that human contact, that human interaction. So just for you to get a little glimpse about my experience with grief is that because my mom was home, I was able to see how she was declining. We were blessed and fortunate that she decided to stay in the house because it was the option if she wanted to be at a nursing home receiving hospice services. So mom decided no, she wanted to stay here. So we were able to have that time with her last days, and I am very blessed to have my sister Doris that helped. She was present through this journey of my mom's health and the loss. So the day of my mom's passing, that evening, I was providing care to my mom. She was at the time bedbound. Her health had declined greatly. And every couple hours, we will switch her position to prevent bed sores or bed ulcers. So this evening, I had just switched her position, and I was getting ready to feed my daughter. Mind you, I have a daughter with autism that is not fully independent feeding herself. So I made sure mom was ready before I went to take care of my daughter. So before I served my daughter dinner, I came back to my room to use the bathroom and wash my hands. So when I'm like rushing, so when I walk into my room, I noticed her color had changed a little bit. So after I used the restroom, honestly, while I'm in the restroom, in the bathroom, my heart is racing. Remember, I'm a registered nurse. So I noticed the color of her skin had changed. As I am approaching her bed, I could see how my mom was almost gray in color. When I touched her, she was cold, and I could see that she was no longer breathing. But the nurse in me proceeded to still check her pulse. My mom didn't have a pulse. My mom is not breathing. She's cold. I could see her color. I could see no movement. I still proceeded to grab my stethoscope and look for a heartbeat. And this was the stage 1 of grief, where I was in denial. I was processing what my eyes were witnessing. I will even add to that about the anticipatory grief. My mom is home receiving hospice services, and for me it was this battle of the mind and even the spirit with the practical human beings that we are. And by that, what I mean, it was the battle of me witnessing my mom declining, praying, having faith, and hoping for a miracle, while the practical and the reality part of me was seeing my mom slipping away. So, although my mom didn't receive her miracle here on earth, I know she received her miracle in heaven. So with that, I want to get that glimpse of how I started to experience the grief and the loss, or the loss and the grief. I was the one that saw my mom and had to eventually then share with others that my mom had passed. So going back to processing that my mom was no longer there, I even went as far as checking her blood pressure. Honestly, the nurse in me was still trying to reason that that there was still hope, that she was still there. So after I had to process that, no, mom took her last breath, I cried. Honestly, while I'm checking her vitals and all of that, I'm already crying. Crying out to the Lord and talking to my mom and letting her know how much I love her. And eventually, once I cried my eyes out and I was able to take several deep breaths and gain my composure, I proceeded to call my immediate family members, the funeral home, and then eventually my pastor. So with that, I want you to get, once again, that glimpse of how everybody experiences grief differently. Of course, if your family member's in the hospital, if it was an accident, if, I don't know, there's so many different ways that a person could pass away. There's the ones that are unexpected death, that they were doing fine and suddenly had that experience. But in my case, there was the anticipatory grief, seeing my mom slowly declining, and then when it actually did happen, starting to go through that denial. At first, when your loved one passed away, you're in shock. So is that part of you that is hurting, but then the part of you that has to process everything. And by process, I mean making these phone calls to the funeral home. If you don't have your funeral arrangements, then it's making these choices, making these decisions about the casket, the clothing, all these details. So one of the things that I will suggest or recommend is that if you have a loved one that is experiencing an illness, or you know what, even if they're not experiencing an illness, if like for your parents to maybe start making those funeral arrangements now, and even they could choose what they want, so that way when this time comes, it's one less thing that you or your family members have to make a decision. So going back to that day, it was hard. It was really hard. But I am blessed that, once again, my sister was my first contact. She immediately came. And when the funeral home came to take my mom, that was devastating to see her lifeless body being taken. And of course, the funeral home has their procedures of how things are done, but it was hard to see her body leaving the house. And because it was in the middle of COVID, her funeral arrangements were very different. The funeral home only allowed, at the time, 10 people to attend, and this was including their 2 staff members. So only 8 family members could be present, or 10 people could be present at my mom's funeral. So with that, not to be too extensive on this video, I want to remind you that if you are the one experiencing that grief and that loss, to be kind to yourself, to remember that this is a process, that the Lord will sustain you, and time will help you manage the grief and the loss and process those emotions. Going back to what I said on my introduction video, I have a great Christian therapist that had helped me navigate all my feelings and emotions. So if you're the one experiencing either anticipatory grief or you already lost a loved one, I do highly recommend for you to see a therapist. There's so many amazing therapists that could help you navigate through all of this. Don't wait until a crisis occurs. And by a crisis, I mean when you find yourself in that deep depression or deep anxiety where you're not able to function properly. In my case, I am a mother, a single mother. So I needed to take care of myself, because being a caregiver to her would have affected her if I was not sane, if I was not able to focus and perform as a mother. So I want to leave you guys with a Bible verse that is encouraging, and it is found in Isaiah 40:31. And I'm just going to read the first part of it, where it says that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Just remember that there are going to be times that you don't have the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental strength. And that's when we have to rely on the Lord. That is not going to be by your strength, but it's going to be by His strength. And also learn how to rely on others for help. I think sometimes that as females, it's difficult, it's hard to ask for help. And even when people are offering help, in my case, I felt like I was being a burden. If someone would offer to bring food and even leave it at my doorsteps, I didn't want to what I thought was bothering other people, when it was not. I was not bothering other people. They were offering help. And I am grateful for those few people that were those people that remain present, that even if I said, oh, I'm okay, they will still show up and bring groceries or bring food. So just know who your tribe is. And if you don't have a tribe, it's okay to ask for help when you are experiencing loss, when you're experiencing grief. And not just in the practical, there's also the spiritual. There were times that I needed someone to pray with me or to pray for me. One thing that I was able to do when I was going through my challenging days, when I was not able to focus or even pray, it was actually worship music. There were so many times that I will try to pray and it was difficult. It was hard. I would start praying and I would just start crying. So it was like the worship songs were doing that prayer for me, and they would comfort me. Of course, those worship songs that were founded on the word of the Lord. And if you're not a believer, be mindful of what type of music you're listening to if you're experiencing loss and grief. What type of music? Is it something that is encouraging you, or is it something that is just setting you back to go deeper into depression or go deeper into anxiety? So I will leave you with this for today to, once again, be encouraged that This too shall pass. Right now, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Don't try to negate what you're going through. These are your feelings. These are what you're experiencing. So be still and know that He is God, that God is with you. Once again, He will sustain you. And I will continue to be here to encourage you and continue to share my experience. So you have a blessed day. And once again, thank you for being here at A Smiling Hope. Have a good day.